Greg Roman's offense, Jim Harbaugh's offense that has always used a rushing quarterback. We remember how good Kaepernick was for fantasy. I'm not saying Herbert's going to be rushing.
It sounds like you just said Justin Herbert is calling Kaepernick.
Hey, that's right. It does sound like that. I didn't mean that.
Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Code Mayo and Underdog Fantasy right now will get you a deposit bonus of up to $250, and you may want to do that because we are already accepting Underdog usernames for the Pat Mayo Experience NFL Underdog Pick'em League contest. What are the rules? We do not know as of right now, but we're working on that. What are the payouts? We do not know on that either, but you need to get yourself pre-registered right now. It's down in the description. Just put in your Underdog handle if you don't have one. Use code MAYO, go sign up, because you're going to want to be in it, because we're going to hammer out a very fun league for the NFL season as it pertains to Underdog Pick'em. Joining me to break down the top 150 rankings. If you missed the show last Thursday, I recommend that you go check it out, or you can just find the list of the rankings down in the description, completely free right now in the Mayo Media Substack. And we're going to go over the notes from the weekend and what has changed in the rankings. Denny Carter from Roto World and NBC Sports. We were just talking off air that we haven't done a show together in 10 years. We're old.
Yeah. It's true. I told you I was feeling existential, Pat, because it has been a long time since I did your show. I'm happy to be back. Hopefully it won't be 10 more years until I'm back again.
I mean, for someone with as good a hair as you have, why are you wearing a hat?
Okay, here's the thing. Sometimes I only find time to exercise when I can fit it in, and I did it just before the show, so my hair is a mess, Pat, and I can't show that to people.
Okay, that's fair. You still have fantastic hair, though. Well, let's start with the biggest news of the weekend, or at least a list of the biggest news from the weekend. We'll try to break this all down. Gardner Minshew is now the starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders over AOC, kicked out of the squad, put to the bench, and what does this do for all of our skill position guys? I assume it has no effect whatsoever on Davante Adams. He's just going to be fed the entire time. But I actually think that Minshew, better for Jacoby Myers, and maybe dial down some of the Trey Tucker buzz.
Man, Trey Tucker is a dog, by the way. I mean, I don't know what to say about him beyond, like, he might just force his way into being a thing for fantasy, although obviously we've seen him in the preseason without Adams on the field, and Jacoby Myers has had very limited playing time, so just keep that in mind. I think Minshew is the best case scenario for fantasy for all these guys. He's better. Like, he's better than Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell is like a backup at best, and I know that Antonio Pierce seems to like O'Connell. He seemed to root for him to, get this job or really seize the opportunity. It didn't work out because, again, he's probably just not good. But I think Minshew can be a point guard, a distributor, and that could be awesome for all of these guys, besides Zamir White, who probably still won't have a pass game role, really.
So I have Davante Adams at number 15 overall. Yeah, 15 overall. That's actually a spot ahead of Puka, a spot ahead of Olave. Broke down why I'm just tempering expectations on Puka a little bit. He's still 16th overall. Where do you have Adams in conjunction with those guys, maybe versus, I don't know, Garrett Wilson? Like, is he a part of that tier? Is he a part of the tier after? How do you see his outlook this year?
Yeah, I struggle. I'm always going back and forth between Adams and Garrett Wilson. I want Garrett Wilson, just straight up. I will say, though, that, for a second straight year, Wilson's situation is very tenuous, right? I mean, it really depends on the Achilles health of a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers. So I don't really know if I can go all in on Garrett Wilson across all teams and formats. But Adams, he can survive in a horrible offensive situation. We saw that near the end of last year. I think that we're going to see 170, 180 targets again in this Raiders offense because they're probably not going to be good. Now, there is a worst case scenario for Adams, which is that the Raiders defense is actually pretty good this year. And in that case, they're going to establish it. They're going to play slow. They're going to try not to lose. That means not many dropbacks for Minshew. That's not great. That could be pretty bad for Adams. But I think you have him ranked correctly here.
Yeah, I have Garrett Wilson at number 10 For anyone who hasn't clicked on the actual rankings list, those are for half-point PPR season-long fantasy, not best ball, your season-long fantasy drafts. Jaylen Warren is now going to miss multiple weeks with a hamstring injury for the Steelers. I had liked Warren more than Najee just because I think that he's better, that given equal playing time, that Warren would simply do more with the touches. But now I have a thing with soft tissue injuries, be it receivers, running backs, whatever it is. They're always going to try to force themselves back too early, and then they're going to re-injure themselves or not be 100%. And then we're going to be waiting there for 7 weeks where he's like, oh yeah, this guy's not doing anything. He's no good anymore. So I initially had Warren at number 72 in the rankings and Najee lower. This feels like a situation where I need to bump up Najee and bump down Warren.
It does. And, I'm still mourning, honestly. I have so much Jaylen Warren exposure in best ball. And folks, it's over. Like Pat said, like these injuries, they last forever. I mean, if the Steelers are smart, they're probably going to hold him out in the early part of the regular season and help him get to 100% before he returns to the lineup. In that case, I think the season can be salvaged for Jaylen Warren. But it's going to be the Najee show here. Like, there's just no doubt about it. The Najee drafters are going to get away with it, as they always do. They've never not gotten away with it. They're going to do it again. And this is going to be a run-first offense. He's going to see all the high-value touches. He could see a fair amount of pass game work. So Najee becomes a really appealing draft pick for folks who fade running back early, and I take no pleasure in reporting that.
Would you rather have Najee or, I don't know, Devin Singletary?
I was hoping you wouldn't say Singletary because I've invested a lot of capital in talking about Singletary and writing about him for some reason. I would, at this point, I'd actually go Harris because of the Warren injury. The Warren injury, we can't ignore that. We can't pretend that everything's going to be fine, by week one. It's not. It's not. This was a serious hamstring issue. Also, Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator for the Steelers, he leans toward bigger backs. Like, he likes bigger backs. He liked Tyler Algier. He liked Derrick Henry. Okay. He's going to like Najee Harris, even if it's not pretty. It's not going to be pretty. And it's never pretty with Najee Harris. But yeah, I would go with Harris there.
Ramondre Stevenson or Najee Harris?
Stevenson. I'm higher on Stevenson than consensus. I see you have him ranked behind like Nick Chubb, for instance. I would go with Stevenson over Chubb because it's really unclear when we're going to get 100% healthy Nick Chubb. Like that honestly, it could be November or somewhere in that range. If you think you're going to be able to survive that long without Chubb in your lineup, then go for it. For me, I think Stevenson, the way he's being used in the preseason suggests, and his new contract, by the way, suggests that he's going to be something close to a 3-down back. So I think Stevenson's not going to be game script sensitive, which is awesome. I know Antonio Gibson is there. I know he's also a very hated fantasy player among a lot of folks who play in the game. But Stevenson is, I think, has a lot of PPR upside in this offense. They're going to be chasing points. I don't think that'll hurt him too much.
All right, so I'll go Najee one spot behind Stevenson, so 82 and 83. I'm not going to be budged off Nick Chubb, because even if it is week 8, whatever it might be, I know that when he is 100%, he is an elite fantasy back. If it doesn't work out, then I wasted my 7th, 8th round pick, whatever it might be, on Nick Chubb. If he actually works out 2 months into the season, and I have the extra bench space, which I'm not going to plug him in week 1 even whenever he's active, but if we can get him back to being a 70-30 bell cow in Cleveland, like, he could be a league winner.
He could. I mean, definitely there is that path. And honestly, I often forget that 8th, 9th, 10th round picks, like, they're not gonna, make or break your team often. And this one would probably make it more than break it. But I feel like the extent of the injury to Chubb last year, it just freaks me out a little bit about whether he can return to that role at all this year. I think we assume that everybody just recovers from catastrophic knee injuries quickly, and we saw with Javonte Williams last year that he did not. Sometimes these guys take time to get back.
Do you think that Javonte is going to be fine? Because he looks fine in the preseason.
He looks really good.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I I'm in. I'm totally in on Javonte Williams on the Roto World Football Show with Pat Daugherty. I've talked extensively about how I can't stop drafting Javonte Williams, and I feel like I should hedge a little bit with some McLaughlin or whoever else is in that backfield. Well, mostly McLaughlin, but I think that he is going to be the clear lead back, and I think that the pass game work that you're going to get with Bo Nix checking down over and over and over again, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be like highlight stuff, but it's going to be cool for Javonte Williams to see, 6, 7, maybe 8 targets in a game and see what he can do with that. He looks more explosive. I think things are trending up for him.
Do you think that Justin Fields could end up being the week 1 starter in Pittsburgh?
Man, I mean, he looks so bad.
So does Russ.
I was going to say he looks so bad, and yes, he could be the week 1 starter. They both look like maybe like the worst quarterback duo in the league right now. It looks like Gardner Minshew would be a better fit for the Steelers than these guys. But I think from a fantasy standpoint, okay, I don't know about real football. Okay, I've never watched a game. I'm kidding mostly, but Fields, he had 8 rushes in this past preseason game against the Bills. That's awesome. Like if we can get like 8 to 10 rushing attempts from Justin Fields, like that's what we're looking for. It doesn't even matter if he's a bad passer. I will say that if you fade quarterback, if you go late round quarterback, I think Fields is a must get for folks who take that strategy.
I think it would depend on the league format that you're in. If it's a 1 quarterback league, even if you do go late round QB, there's more better Justin Fields type players. I think if we knew that he was the starter, I think that would be a different situation. Not knowing that you still have these, like, why would Daniel Jones be a worse pick than Justin Fields? I don't think that he would. I think Daniel Jones would be fine.
Really? I don't know.
As a fantasy quarterback, dude's just going to bomb it and run. He might throw like 8 picks a game. Who cares?
True, and they're not going to bench him ever unless he gets hurt. We talked with a Giants beat reporter, Pat Leonard, on a recent Roto World show, and he wasn't so sure that the rushing would be there for Daniel Jones coming off of this injury. I don't know what to make of that, but I mean, when in 2022, when Daniel Jones was kind of fun for fantasy, it was because he had a lot of design rushes. So if he can get back to that, then you're probably right. I'm a little skeptical on that.
I would just think that if Wilson starts the season as the starter and struggles, then we'll see Fields. But I could actually see Tomlin being like, all right, Fields is in. Oh, he had 2 bad games. He's out again. Russell's back in.
Yes.
I could see that being a carousel, and it's just maddening the entire time. However, if Fields is the starter, that's bad for the running backs because he might just steal touchdowns from them.
The Steelers are going to switch quarterbacks more than Sahith Theegala switches putters. Am I right? Come on, folks. We love our golf, right? Come on.
Does he switch putters a lot? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he does. He switches like every round. He switches putters.
Hideki tried to switch his putter before the 4th round of the last event that he won. He was leading the field in putting, so it's a big mental game when it comes to the putter. Yeah,
apparently Theegala was seen trying out a bunch of putters on the practice green, and he just decided to go with one at the last second. So my guy's struggling.
This one kind of flew under the radar for me because it's a player that I really like, and now I'm like, great, here we go. And these are all guys that I have on like my main keeper team too. Between Warren and now Rashid Shaheed has an unspecified toe and or foot injury. Dennis Allen wouldn't comment on either. He might now not be ready for week 1.
Ugh, that stinks. I mean, I will say that I think Shaheed is better for best ball. I know it's a cop-out, but it's true. I mean, he's a guy who's going to make big plays downfield. In some weeks, that'll be cool. And some weeks that those are not going to hit, because they're inherently kind of volatile. And that'll be frustrating for folks who draft him in fantasy and try to plug him in as a wide receiver 3 or whatever. I think that his ADP will drop per this news, and that could be cool. You get a value on a guy who could have a real role in the Saints offense. But I guess what is it? What does this mean? A.T. Perry is the wide receiver 2 for the Saints. You know what it means, actually. Now, here's what it means, Pat. It means it's Taysom season. That's all it means.
How old is Taysom Hill? 54 years old?
He just turned 53. Yes.
Where would you put him amongst tight ends? If he has the tight end eligibility, is he a top 10 tight end? Because he's gonna have some games where he probably scores.
All right.
He'll probably have 4 games this year where he scores 28 fantasy points throughout the course
So
of the week. But he's gonna have
right.
2 bangers for most of the weeks.
Listen, better in best ball. Again, I will say this.
Not a best ball show. Stop bringing up best ball. We're talking season long fantasy. Like, would you draft
right.
him?
I would draft him. The question is not whether he'll be a top 10. Will he be top 5? I mean, I think his usage is going to be out of control, and people are not going to like it. You know, they're going to, oh, he's a tight end, and he's playing in the backfield, and he's throwing passes, and he's running. It doesn't. I don't care. If he delivers fantasy points for me, I'm fine. I'm cool with that. You plug him into tight end, and get your points. Like, do you want to be right, or do you want to play? You want to score fantasy points? I'd like to score some fantasy points. You can get him at the end of your draft, and he's going to easily outscore guys who are going like 6 to 8 rounds ahead of him.
Would you rather have Taysom Hill on your season-long fantasy team or David Njoku?
Oh, oh, why'd you have to do that? God, I was hoping you were going to be like Noah Fant. I guess Njoku.
I worry about Njoku with Deshaun Watson. Like, he put up his bones with Joe Flacco last year.
He did. I wish the Browns had just kept Flacco and kept going with him. That was so good for fantasy. They couldn't, though, because he's better than Watson, and you can't have someone better than Watson on your roster, right? So I think that Njoku will be the number 2 option behind Cooper, though, and that should provide him with at least a floor. And also, I trust Kevin Stefanski. I think that he's a really good schemer, offensive play caller, and I think that he knows what he has with Njoku.
Does he know what he has with Deshaun Watson, though? Because that seemed to be the problem. No. It's like, oh, yeah,
No.
we have Deshaun Watson from 5 years ago. So you don't have Deshaun Watson from 5 years ago.
I mean, Watson is a 2-ton anchor around the neck of Kevin Stefanski and the entire organization. I'm sure that if they were honest, they would say, we desperately don't want this guy. Like, he's washed. He's done. We want Flacco. We want a game manager. But they have to roll with him because they're paying him the GDP of Italy.
Is there a chance he's not washed and that last year that injury was really the thing that looked like it was crippling his arm strength?
I guess. I mean, but like, does this guy ever finish a game? I mean, he's constantly getting dinged up. Like, he hasn't really played much over the past, 4 years because of injuries, and then, his legal issues. I don't know. I mean, in fantasy, it's a low risk proposition if you want to get Watson. But for the rest of these players, I do worry about his availability or in his skill set. I don't know what he has left.
DeAndre Hopkins is supposedly going to be ready for week 1. He is being drafted behind Calvin Ridley right now, but I kind of think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be better as long as he is healthy in week 1.
I have a lot of Hopkins, and I have seen his ADP dip with this injury, which makes him more gettable. Now, I think that it depends on how you're building your redraft roster. If you go with 0 RB or something close to it, where you're getting a lot of receivers, a lot of high-end receivers early in the draft, and you can take Hopkins. Honestly, you can get Hopkins right now as your wide receiver 5 if you play it right. And then you can just have him on your bench until he's ready to go, until he's fully ready to go. I think that that's a luxury that could be fun for fantasy. Now, if you're doing a balanced roster or a running back heavy roster, and you're taking Hopkins as your wide receiver 2 or 3, and you've got to play him every week, and you're going to be without him maybe a week or 2 to start the season, depending on his injury, I think that could be a problem. So it depends on how you're approaching your draft.
Well, what do you prefer is the structure that you want to go with? Like, do you let the draft come to you, or do you have an idea going in?
I'm totally ideological about drafting. I go in and I do what I'm going to do, except for when people fall. When guys fall significantly, I will become a little less ideological and take them. But really, I mean, it depends on your draft room. I could see a guy like Hopkins, Pat. I could see a guy like Hopkins dropping significantly with this injury, with the questions around his availability. So just keep an eye on him, because I do think that he is the wide receiver 1 in this Tennessee offense, and I think the Titans are going to be a pass first team this year. which will be hard to get used to because for their entire existence, they've been run first.
Do you have any take on Pollard versus Spears? Which one you would want?
Oh, that's such a hard one because again, with Pollard last year, he terrible, like horrific in every way. But he was coming off a really serious broken leg, like that he suffered in January of the previous season. And he said, we actually interviewed him at the Super Bowl for the Roto World show, and he said, look, I wasn't right until like mid-November. Not that he was good after mid-November, but he was not as bad. And I think that's that could be a situation where he comes back this year, another year removed from that injury, and he's better. So I'm not dismissing him, but Tajay Spears, the metrics are very, very good, and I'm very interested in him as a potential like running back too. Hopefully, he's the guy catching passes. That's what I would say.
Let's just go to the very top of the rankings for a second. Obviously, I have Christian McCaffrey at number 1. Who do you have at number 2?
Tyreek Hill.
Okay. And why is he better than Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb? Who I have Jefferson at 2, Lamb at 3, Hill at 4.
Right. Well, I mean, I definitely would not chastise anyone for taking Jefferson or Lamb over Tyreek. So the Dolphins had a ton of positive game script last year, and Mike McDaniels took that positive game script and he established the run, and he played kind of slow and he was careful, and the pass volume was way down for the Miami offense. Now, the Dolphins lost a lot of defensive talent in the offseason. By the way, don't tell Dolphins fans that. They get very mad, very upset about that. But they did. That's a fact. So I think that the Dolphins are going to be forced into maybe more shootouts, more negative game script, which means they're going to have to drop back more. So I think Tyreek Hill, besides being ultra efficient as a receiver, could have more volume on his side, both in routes, in targets, and everything. I know he's getting up there in age, but I do like Hill as the first receiver off the board.
See, I just, when I think about these top 3, and I think it's important to have a huge take on these ones, because if you do pick second, you're going to be forced to this choice. And it does seem like Lamb is probably consensus going number 2 right now, but it really depends on which draft that you're going to be in. But now that Sam Darnold is going to be starting for the Vikings, at least for the short-term future here, that I just think it's really good for Justin Jefferson, because he's going to drop back, he's going to sling it to Jefferson, or he's going to sling it to the other team. And if he slings it to the other team, that's just going to put them in more pass-happy scripts, which is more targets for Justin Jefferson.
I mean, Jefferson was fine with Nick Mullins at quarterback last year, so I think we're going to see that same sort of thing. Look, I mean, Jefferson's going to be in hell all season. Obviously, he's going to hate his life. But Darnold can get it done. I am the resident NBC Sports Darnold apologist. I don't know how this happened. I didn't set out to do that. Okay, like this wasn't one of my life goals, but I'll take it. I will bear that burden. And I think Darnold can be fine for this offense. I like Kevin O'Connell. I think he knows what he's doing. And I do expect the volume to be there big time for Jefferson.
Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Supercharger, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Everyone who tunes into the Pat Mayo Experience knows from time to time I like to talk to you about some health supplements that I end up taking, and I've been doing Timeline's Mitopure now for about a month. Feel great, And I think you can too. Take 2 soft gels a day for 2 months, and you can see significant improvements in your cellular energy, your muscle strength, and your endurance. That was the big thing. I've been golfing more this summer and lifting less. Yet when I go back to the gym for my once a week, like max lift, I am not really atrophying that much. I'm not losing a ton of muscle, which is absolutely fantastic news for me and my golf game, because if you work out too much, then you get too sore, you get too stiff, you need to retain that flexibility. I'm retaining my muscle mass at the same time, although I'm not working out as much. And it comes in 2 product designs to fit your needs. They're berry powder, which is great to mix into your breakfast yogurt or daily smoothie. That's how I've been doing it. I've been eating some strawberries, raspberries, blackberries with a little bit of yogurt, a little bit of protein powder, then boom, Timeline's Mito Pure right on top of that. Or they have soft gels for the days where you're just on the run and wanted something convenient to grab and go. So Timeline is offering 10% off your first order of Mito Pure right now. So go to timeline.com/Mayo to get that 10% off. All right? You mentioned Bo Nix a little bit earlier. Very positive signs from him so far in the preseason. And when we spoke about it, not you and I, but when I spoke about it on the show after the draft, thinking about the situation that he's being placed into with Sean Payton, that it makes a lot of sense as a guy who's going to dump the ball off a lot. What do you make of his fantasy prospects for this year? Like, would you rather have a Bo Nix in a 2-quarterback league or like a Will Levis?
Nix. I would take Nix over Levis. I mean, I think they both. When I'm looking at late round quarterbacks, I want to see if they have any rushing upside. Because that's obviously the cheat code, the Konami code, whatever you want to call it. I think that Nix and Levis are quietly good in that area. But I think that Nix will have a lock on that starting role. And I think that Levis is the kind of passer. I mean, look, has the guy ever completed like an intermediate pass? I don't think I've ever seen that. So I think that he has a chance to, lose the favor of the coaching staff for Mason Rudolph to come in and just do what he's told, which is really the NFL model right now, is for coaches to get quarterbacks who do exactly as they're told. Brock Purdy being, the ultimate example of this. And so I do think Levis is a little shaky. I like Nix a lot. I think that he's going to be quietly very good. I think this Broncos offense in general is being underrated.
Okay, if they're being underrated, we spoke about Javonte Williams, how he's maybe one of these running back twos that could propel himself up through volume, especially in the passing game. Is it Courtland Sutton then that's being drafted too low?
Yes, I do. I do think Courtland Sutton is going to be the clear wide receiver 1 on this team. And I don't really know beyond that. I mean, Marvin Mims is not going to be a thing. I'm convinced of that. Like maybe in like return leagues, like leagues that give fantasy points for return yardage, you might want to look at Mims. But I mean, there's just little indication that he's going to be locked into 2 receiver sets in this offense. Josh Reynolds will probably run more routes than Marvin Mims. I do think that Greg Dulcich is another guy that I'm interested in as a late round flyer in this offense. I'm not saying it's going to be a world beating offense, but I think that Bo Nix is like custom made for Sean Payton's system.
Let's talk about the other rookies. Caleb Williams, people were going pretty crazy that this guy, hey, he might actually be good. He was the first pick in the draft. Why do people think that Caleb sucks?
Right. You know what I think? I think it's like the personality thing, with Caleb, where people were, turned off by it for whatever reason. And so they said, well, he can't actually be good. And it turns out he's really good. And it turns out I'm going back and I'm deleting Caleb posts right now because I've been making fun of people who have comped him to Mahomes over the years. And my guy looks a little bit like Mahomes in the preseason. So I'm a little nervous about those takes. Bears offense, another one that's being all of them are being underdrafted, I think. And I do like your ranking of DJ Moore and Roman Dunze. I think that you're valuing them properly.
Well, I mean, Keenan Allen, much was made about his weight, and I think he weighs like 5 pounds more than he did last year. People really glom onto the weirdest things when they hear news reports about players. But the one thing I really liked about Caleb Williams, just highlights-wise, is that I liked him initially because I think he can extend plays and keeps the ball moving down the field. But I think that he's going to have some untapped rushing upside that many of us weren't really factoring in. And we just see that from rookies, that when all else fails, just take off.
I think you're right. I think that we could even see that like where it counts the most, like inside the 20, inside the 10. He could, he could punch in, I don't know, 5 rushing touchdowns this year. Like that's significant. That's 30 fantasy points. I like him I really like him as a late round pick. I think that he's been underdrafted throughout the season, and I think that he's surrounded by, I mean, one of the best trios of receivers in the league with Keenan Allen, Odunze, and DJ Moore. I've found myself taking him quite often. I know not a best ball show, but in best ball, in 2 quarterback leagues or super flex, I think that he's also being undervalued.
Yeah, that's where I came to that conclusion. So I stuck him on a tier with Purdy and Burrow and Jordan Love, Stroud, Dak, and Jayden Daniels. I still prefer Jayden Daniels in fantasy because I do think when all else fails, he's just going to run. Even if Dan Quinn's going to give him like the side eye stare down, like you got to start sliding, man, or you're going to be dead here. But for everyone who's drafting Anthony Richardson so high, I don't quite understand why not just wait and take Jayden Daniels instead.
I'm 100% with you. I have been asking this question from the rooftops for a while now. My neighbors they're calling the cops. It's very unfair, but yeah, I mean, why take Richardson as a 5th or 6th quarterback off the board when you can get Jayden Daniels as the 13th or even 14th quarterback off the board? Like, there's nothing in their profiles that says that Richardson is going to outscore Jayden Daniels. I think Daniels has a really good shot of outscoring Richardson. I think Caleb Williams has a good shot of outscoring Richardson. I've been chastised for this online because people say, well, what about Shane Steichen? You don't believe in Shane Steichen? I mean, I don't know. It's a guy, what has he ever done? What is he? Suddenly Bill Belichick? I don't know what to say. I mean, he's fine. He's fine. I don't base my fantasy picks on a guy who coached a good offense once. I don't know.
It just seems like they're all, I mean, Caleb Williams below that in terms of rushing upside and potential, although it seems like he has the best weapons around him, like you mentioned. But they're another team like the Raiders as well, where they actually have a good defense, so they might actually play a little bit slower. You see fewer plays run on that side, so that's bad for Caleb Williams. But he's going significantly later than both of those guys. That if it comes down to Anthony Richardson versus Daniels, I think you're mining very much of the same thing from them.
Yes, I agree. Also, I think people are just, look, 10 years ago, Richardson, after last year's disappointment with the injuries and whatnot, he would have been going as like the QB 15. Okay. But now we're all so smart and savvy that we're taking him as QB 5 or 6. I think we're outsmarting ourselves a little bit with that pick.
One of the backfield, sticking with Jayden Daniels, that I'm having a lot of problems with in terms of rankings and who I want and how good either of these guys is, if you want them at all, is going to be Brian Robinson versus Austin Ekeler. It does seem coming out of the weekend like Brian Robinson is the play. And I think a lot of that has to do with the potential rushing that we're going to see from Daniels, that so much of Ekeler is built up on him catching passes and him running routes that I don't know if that's going to be in Washington's playbook this year.
Generally, rushing quarterbacks, like hypermobile quarterbacks, are not dumping it off to running backs because they don't have to. I mean, Lamar Jackson has never really done that. Josh Allen just started doing that last year a little bit. Jalen Hurts doesn't do that at all because they can simply take off. And if it's 2nd and 5, they're not going to dump it off. They're just going to go run and gain 8 yards and slide and move on to the next play. So Jayden Daniels is not doing that. Like, he's not going to check down to Ekeler. So Ekeler's game and his fantasy prospects are based on that. I don't really know where it goes from there. Robinson, but I do think Robinson is his touchdown upside is limited because I think Jayden Daniels is going to be the team's main rushing weapon inside the red zone.
I can see that. RunTheSims.com is available for free during the preseason. If you want to customize and make your projections, all you need to do is put in your email. So go to RunTheSims.com right now and go do that and make your own rankings. If you want to say, hey, Brian Robinson's actually going to get 70% of the carries for Washington this season. Eckler's not going to do much, and see how that affects him in the overall projections. So if you had to draft one of them, because they're going right around the same time, you would draft Robinson over Ekeler?
I would take Robinson, even in a PPR format. I mean, look, Ekeler has a lot of goal line and red zone history with the Chargers. So maybe I'm kind of misreading the tea leaves here, but I think that Robinson is the play.
I mean, you don't want to bad talk Austin Ekeler either, because he might be your co-host on at Roto World next year.
I know. No, I mean he's a friend of fantasy football, and I don't want to. Austin, if you're listening, I love you. I love you, man. Look, keep pushing the fantasy stuff. We appreciate it.
Where would you rank Malik Nabers? Because it seemed like the injury was going to be a thing, and then we saw the game on the weekend. It's like, oh yeah, that's not going to be a problem whatsoever. Is he like legit good? Like, should I be taking him over Michael Pittman?
I am. He was targeted on 35% of his routes the other day against Houston. Like that's really strong, and it's perfectly in line with his target per route run rate in college or in his final year at LSU. So I think that he's going to be an absolute target hog. Like there's no like meaningful target competition in the New York offense. I think Neighbors is really well. He fits well in the modern NFL, which is a bunch of dump off passes, a bunch of short area passes to really fast guys who can turn those short passes into long gains, and that's what Neighbors does. Like that's his thing. So I'm being very aggressive with how I approach Neighbors.
So I have him ranked at number 39 in the rankings. Based on what you're saying, is that too low?
Yeah, I am taking him over Drake London. You have London one spot ahead. Waddle is a tough one, but like if we're just talking about like cross positional rankings, like you have like Alvin Kamara at 33 compared to Neighbors at 39. I would definitely go for Neighbors over a guy like that. Even ETN, I'd rather have Neighbors no matter my build. No matter what I'm going for with my roster build. I think Neighbors is being. I actually saw him go in an auction league, $200 budget. He went for $5 the other day to me, and that was I didn't really understand. I had to look at Roto World to say, oh, did he like tear his ACL? Like what happened? Why did I get him for that? I don't think folks are really factoring in the sort of opportunity he has.
And that's what we're trying to mine here. We're trying to mine the opportunity. So even if he, let's say, listen, a 37% target share is probably unlikely throughout the course of the season. Let's say it's 27, which would be amongst the elite of the NFL. How many of those are actually good targets from Daniel Jones?
Very few. and Drew Lock is terrible too. So that, I mean, obviously, like I would love for Neighbors to play with a competent quarterback. Man, you put him with even a guy like Geno Smith or something, like he could cook. He could be the wide receiver 1 overall with a competent quarterback. Daniel Jones is horrendous. I mean the pick he threw against the Texans in the preseason game was just an abomination. I don't even know if he might lose the job, even though the team wants desperately for him to maintain the job. But I think the Neighbors can survive that with just pure volume.
James Cook ran 100% of the snaps with the starters for the Bills. I have him at running back 9. That's number 31 overall. That's ahead of ETN and Alvin Kamara in the rankings right now. I get the impression that he's either going to be really bad or he's going to be a guy that you have on your team that wins you your league. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of in-between for him this year.
Yeah, I think one thing fantasy folks are forgetting from last year after the offensive coordinator change to Joe Brady is that the Bills were very run first, in all sorts of game script. I think that really impacts a guy like James Cook. Now, is Ray Davis going to factor in short yardage and maybe goal line stuff? I mean, possibly, but I think that's something of a reach. James Cook could see way more volume than we anticipate, and he happens to be pretty good. Like all the nerdy running back metrics, James Cook was very good in all of them last year. So I agree with your ranking here. I'm in on that ranking, and I think overall the industry is too low on Cook.
It just seems like he can piece together some very average weeks and turn out like real life weeks that turn out to be great fantasy weeks, even without touchdowns. And then if we do run hot the other way, where Allen doesn't rush for 10 touchdowns, he rushes for 5, those all go to Cook. All of a sudden he's running back 3.
Absolutely. He scored 4 touchdowns last year. Josh Allen served as the main goal line back, basically, for Buffalo. We're hoping for a little bit more James Cook in the red zone. But even if not, you're right. I think that he can get there for fantasy without a ton of touchdowns. I think that he's that sort of player.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of 12 for 80 and then 4 catches for 54 yards type games. And then you throw a touchdown into that, all of a sudden you're looking good. It's kind of like that Austin Ekeler year from a few years ago.
Yes, yes, that's exactly. He is something of an Eckler. I mean, he's not built like Eckler, but the usage I think could be Eckler like. And Josh Allen ran really hot on rushing touchdowns last year. Maybe that regresses a little bit, and James Cook would be the obvious beneficiary there.
What are you doing with the Chargers backfield? Are you drafting your guy Gore Vidal?
That's funny. Did you see the book behind me?
I couldn't quite see it now.
Oh, okay. Well, it's written by Vidal. Yeah, and no, I'm not taking that guy. Come on, we got way too over our skis with Kimani Vidal. I know. Look, he's alive. He exists, and we saw that in the most recent preseason game. That's good to know. He exists. He's not going to see the ball in the regular season unless the Chargers suffer multiple backfield injuries. It's going to be Gus Edwards, and it's going to be Dobbins. I'm leaning Dobbins, even though the injury history is off the charts bad. I do think that he has probably more overall volume upside than Gus Edwards. But of course, Gus Bus is simply just going to score all the touchdowns.
See, that's why I lean Edwards over Dobbins. You have the injury history factored in, although I think Gus Bus is pretty banged up at the moment too, but he'll be fine. It's just you have Harbaugh, you have the steady hand. Just turn around and give that guy the ball 3 times from the 3-yard line. See what happens. It's going to be a bunch of carries, high-valued carries, and that's why you're going to want them.
I want to say, while we're on the Chargers, if you don't mind, I wanted to mention that Justin Herbert, assuming that he's going to get back from this foot injury, and maybe that's a big assumption, I think that he could be used as a rusher way more than we anticipate. In summer practices before that foot injury, they were using him on a lot of design runs in 11 on 11 drills. And this is an offense, and Greg Roman's offense, Jim Harbaugh's offense, that has always used a rushing quarterback. We remember how good Kaepernick was for fantasy. I'm not saying Herbert's going to be rushing.
It sounds like you just said Justin Herbert is calling Kaepernick.
That's right. It does sound like that. I didn't mean that. But I don't think Herbert's rushing 8 or 10 times. But I think that we could see design rushing in the range of 4 or 5 a game, especially in high leverage areas. Like near the end zone. So I'm not totally. I mean, Justin Herbert's basically not being drafted right now in some formats. I think that's probably an overstatement about how bad he'll be in this offense because of the rushing.
Speaking of the rushing, and I know we brought this guy up earlier, and apparently you're a big defender of him, but Sam Darnold rushes more than people think.
Yeah, he does, right? I mean, he's a good athlete. I mean, people forget. I'm not holding his Jets history against him, by the way, Pat. No one can survive with that organization. Are you kidding me? I'm not holding that against him. He's going to make mistakes, and people are going to say, "Oh, same old Darnold." But I think that he's shown, in Carolina, especially that he can be a viable starting quarterback, and that's all we need for Justin Jefferson.
What about Jordan Addison then? Is the same logic apply, or is it just going to be, hey, there's Justin Jefferson, I'm going to throw it that guy, he's probably going to catch it?
Right. So I mean, I'm pretty much off Addison because he ran so super hot on touchdowns, especially long touchdowns last year. I know that's his game. But it doesn't mean that he can do that year over year over year. There's also, I guess, the possibility of maybe a suspension or something because of his off-field stuff. He was carted off last week, and apparently he's okay. There's just so much with Addison that is raising red flags, I think. But, hey, if the volume is there overall on a bad Minnesota team in what could be a lost season, then Addison would benefit, I guess.
Let's talk handcuffs for a second, because I always like to take a high-end handcuff for the back of my season-long league. I mean, it rarely works out, but when it does, and you end up with Larry Johnson on your team backing up Priest Holmes, so it's happened once in the past 15 years for me, as evidenced by that, you just win your league. You all of a sudden have the 5th best running back for a guy that costs absolutely nothing. So you have the obvious ones, like David Montgomery. I mean, Gibbs is already banged up, but if he just went away, David Montgomery would be great. A-Chain's kind of interesting because is he the starter? Is Mostert the starter? Even if one of them went down, would they be the full-time bell cow? This we don't know. But then we're into actual guys like Blake Corum or Chase Brown or Antonio Gibson. Do you think it's going to be Jordan Mason as the primary CMC backup?
I do. He seems to have overtaken Elijah Mitchell, which seems impossible because Elijah Mitchell gets every chance to fail. But I think Jordan Mason has taken that role. I will say, if you're looking for like a deep insurance back, if you're doing a zero RB build or whatever, Braylon Allen is your guy for the Jets. Like Braylon Allen is clearly going to be the 3-down back if Breece Hall misses any time. I think that he has league-winning upside in a Jets offense that should be pretty run-heavy. So I'm targeting Allen deep in drafts. Yeah.
All right. Last thing about the Chargers before I let you go. Quentin Johnson said that he can catch now. Does that change anything for you?
It's good. Hey, we're all learning. We're all getting better, and receivers are learning. I read the other day that Kirk Cousins is teaching Kyle Pitts how to catch a football. That's awesome, And so these guys, they're learning more and more every year. No, it doesn't change anything, I should say.
Do you have a preference of Chargers receivers, or is it just like, nah, like let's not do that?
It's mostly nah. Josh Palmer, I guess. Ladd McConkey, I don't know, man. The guy's already hurt. The guy spent his entire college career was injury marred. He's already hurt. He's small in that his frame is small. Okay, when I say he's small online, he's 6 whatever. No, I'm not saying that he's short. I'm saying that he's small. He's maybe not built for the rigors of the NFL. I think Josh Palmer will be the wide receiver one.
I forgot to mention when we had our Bo Nix Broncos conversation, Tim Patrick is back. And
yeah,
he seemed to be like the apple of Bo Nix's eye during the last preseason game. What that means, I have no idea. But it's nice to see Tim Patrick back on the field.
Man, is it ever? 2 straight preseason injuries or training camp injuries have wiped out his past 2 seasons. He could be a thing. Yeah, I mean, Cortland Sutton wasn't playing last night against the Packers. But, I think Tim Patrick could be out there, and get a pretty good route share. Yeah.
All right. Well, do you have any other takeaways from the preseason of like actual vital information? Because the only thing that you see, be it highlights, people making mention, it's just like training camp stuff. Like, oh, here's the really good stuff for anyone who didn't watch. Like, here's these amazing plays. They don't really show you any of the bad plays, especially when it comes to training camp stuff. It's like, oh, here's Garrett Wilson catching 3 balls at once. It's not like him running the wrong route. You never see those ones come up. But is there any takeaways that you had that you think that people should know?
2 things. There was some indication that Tank Dell might not be the rotational player that he appeared to be in the first Texans preseason game. He got a little higher route share. So, it looked like he wasn't going to be part of 2 receiver sets at all. That seems to be something of an overstatement. So I think that Tank Dell probably had, a good showing this past week. And also, the aforementioned Devin Singletary, who's super boring. Okay, I get it. No one's going to get excited about Singletary, but he played basically every single snap with the starters for the Giants. The only time he came off the field was when he was tired. So I think that he's going to get there one way or another, whether it's rushing or pass catching in a horrible Giants offense.
Singletary has such late stage Frank Gore vibes to me.
Yeah. I can see that.
All right, I say he has 20 carries a week for 60 yards and 1 catch for 8. Thanks for showing up.
Well, right. It's going to be 20 carries for 60 yards. Okay, I'll give you that. It's also going to be 5 catches for 45 yards. So that'll be fun,
If that's true, then yeah, I can see the appeal there. I just don't know where to fall on him. Like you're right. He's very boring. He is going late. I get the idea behind him because he actually does have essentially guaranteed workload on this team. It's a bad team. He's someone I might want to play for $4,100 on DraftKings, not have him my season-long team.
Oh man, I'm gonna lose so much money on Devin Singletary and DraftKings. You don't even know.
Just go to the prop sites and bet over on his rushing attempts. That's probably the move.
Oh man, that is the move. This is why I come on the show, Pat. Thank you.
I mean, what do you make of the Giants' defense? Is it going to be any good? Like, are they going to have ample opportunity to run the ball, or is it going to be passing all the time?
The defense is probably not going to be like bottom 5, but I wouldn't be surprised if it like bottom 10. The thing is, here's the thing: when you have Daniel Jones or Drew Lock, you're constantly putting your defense in terrible spots, right? And so that factors in to how a defense performs. So I can see the argument that's like, okay, the Giants will never be in position to establish it, but I don't think that Singletary will be so sensitive to that sort of game script. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely get it. You just have to hope that those passes go to Singletary and they don't just start randomly using Wendell Robinson like they
Oh, yeah.
enjoy to every 3 weeks.
That's right.
So, yeah, that'll do it. I've enjoyed how you've gotten into golf over the past few years.
I've loved it, and you're a big part of it. You know, watching your show, I've gotten into the nerdy metrics. I'm a big fan of your golf analysis.
But you like to play. That's really why you're into it, right?
Yeah, I've been playing since, middle school, and I used to play a ton, and now I don't play so much because I have kids and stuff. So, but yeah, I have been playing more this year. And here's the thing, Pat. Here's something I learned this summer. If you work on your short game, it actually can get better.
No.
And it makes golf more fun when you can get up and down. I just learned this. I want to spread the word.
Yeah, but it's no fun to practice. You want to hit your driver.
Oh God, you have to hate yourself to practice your short game. But I had that box checked.
The move is to find like an executive par 3 where no one plays and just walk out with 20 balls and just practice around on one of the holes for an hour.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, but you got to get used to different sort of chips, right? Using your sand wedge, using maybe a bump and run with your 8-iron or something. Like you got to do it's grueling work, but it pays off so much more than just sitting on the range and like banging your driver 80 times.
It's true. All right. At CD Carter on X, Roto World, NBC Sports. What's your guys' schedule right now versus what it's going to be in season?
Well, right now we do 2 Roto World shows a week on Tuesday and Thursday, and you can find the video version on the NFL and NBC YouTube page. During the season, we'll have those 2 shows along with a Friday show.
All right. Perfect. I mean, I'll be here every day of the week talking NFL on the Pat Mayo Experience. So sub, rate, and review. Sub to Mayo Media Network for all of the video versions as well. If you want the updated list, now updated, of the top 150 rankings, hit the description or just go to the Mayo Media Substack. It's all up there right now. And use Run the Sims in order to create your own projections. If you don't believe Denny or myself, believe yourself. And those tools are free, so make it easy. Make life easy for yourself and go use runthesims.com. And code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy. The link down right now in the description for the Google Forms to sign up for the NFL Pick'em League that the rules will be announced probably in about 2 weeks, but you're going to want to be in it, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!